Welcome everybody, it's Thursday afternoon, it's Litsoc, and today is what day? National Poetry Day 2022, yeah, absolutely. Here's our wonderful poster. I don't remember of such a beautiful one actually. Lots of environmental things, and I think the inspiration originally was Jackie Morris's pictures for the Lost Words by herself and Robert Macfarlane. The words that were being taken out of children's dictionaries and replaced with iPad, screen and mobile phone. So we've got oak tree, acorn, wren, hare, butterfly, orca, otter. Can you imagine a dictionary without an otter in it? Anyway, very beautiful it is too. So we've had a wonderful celebration in the quad at lunchtime. I expect some of you heard. The winners, who were truly excellent. Sadly, Year 9 weren't with us, but we heard from lots of other people. Thank you, Sophie, for reading for Year 9. That was lovely of you. So we come together to share and celebrate poetry. We're very good at poetry in the United Kingdom, across all 4 kingdoms. We have a poet laureate for England, Simon Armitage. We have a Macca for Scotland, Kathleen Jamie. For Wales, we have a bard.
I don't know, I can't remember. It was Gillian Clark for a while.
It was Gillian Clark for a while, but now I have a feeling it is. Let's have a look.
Did you say it's Mr. Humphreys? I'm flattered that you think it might be. Yeah, for those of you who were there, I did actually read a poem in Welsh on the quad.
You did.
Which was way out of my
very good it was too.
Yes, thank you. I can understand quite a lot of it, but yeah, speaking Welsh is a bit rusty for me because I haven't spoken it for the longest time.
And it is Hanan Isa. Hanan Isa.
Hanan Isa, okay.
The national poet of Wales.
There you go, national poet of Wales.
And there she is. This is Hanan Isa.
Ah, cool.
Who is clearly Muslim, and. Words are like ribbons, weaving languages and cultures together, she says. She hopes to continue the great work of her predecessor in promoting Wales, Welshness and the Welsh language outside of its borders. She wants people to recognise Wales as a country bursting creativity, a land of poets and singers with so much to offer the arts. Yeah, so a bit like Imtiaz Darka, she's actually originally from... She's got Iraqi heritage, but Welsh too, and she's a filmmaker and artist, as well as a poet. Interesting. Yeah, and she has written The Mab, a retelling of the Mabinogi. Stories for children.
The Mabinogi.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, excellent. So, we now have full complement. So, we're going to share our favourite poems, or a poem we like today, or we've written today, if you want to. Doesn't matter. You don't have to contribute. And then we're going to have our annual Blackout Poetry competition, which is at the back. And basically, Miss Rio will explain how that works. And usually we have some wonderful examples, don't we, Lulu? See, Anna? Yeah, and it's good fun. But again, you don't have to read them out if you don't want to. So I'm going to kick off with a poem I wrote for Year 8 when I was at the Natural History Museum with them on the 28th of September. And it's called Natural History. Lord of it all, Darwin observes with a benign grace the human species mill and royal beneath him under the cathedral roof. Lady of the Seas, Hope, observes with open maw a human ocean ebb and flow beneath her, under the cathedral roof. Suburb Flotsam, SHS, observes with iPads and wide eyes the quiet specimens fixed forever in cases under the cathedral roof. So thank you. So I wrote that.
Rhythm to that one, actually.
Thank you.
Rolling rhythm.
All about the all about the big hall as you come into what is really like a cathedral, the Natural History Museum, and Darwin as a statue, and then Hope, the blue whale, who is above above it all. Dippy, the dinosaur, now has his own separate gallery, which we didn't get to. Anyway, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. I didn't write this one, I'm afraid, but I got it from one of our many anthologies in the library, Poems to Save the World With, which I thought was very appropriate given the theme. Oh yeah, good idea, thank you. Given the theme of National Poetry Day this year, by my good friend Chris Riddell. In case you hadn't noticed, you must have noticed by now there's that picture of me by my computer, and it was illustrated by the great Chris Riddell, our former children's laureate. So the poem I have chosen is entitled, and it's a beautiful poem called "The Peace of Wild Things" by Wendell Berry. When despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least sound in fear of what my life and children's lives may be, I go and lie down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water, and the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars waiting with their light. For a time, I rest in the grace of the world, and am free. Appreciating simple beauties of nature, whilst, when life can get on top of you a bit. So, thank you.
Lulu, want to go next? Sure.
We'll play a bit of musical chairs now, so I'll swap with you, Lulu.
Okay. Is it something you've chosen or something you've written yourself?
Oh no, it's something I've chosen.
Great.
Does the name Aeneid mean anything to Year 7? Does anyone know what that means?
They won't. These guys will.
Do you guys know what the Aeneid means? Do you want to say?
Tell us. Speak.
Okay, that's fine. The Aeneid is an epic written by Virgil at the beginning of AD, and it tells the story of the hero Aeneas, who travels from Troy to Carthage and then eventually to Italy to found a new race and a new home for the Trojans who have had to flee Troy because the Greeks have ransacked it. I'm studying this poem in both classics and in Latin, so in the original and in the translation. The translation's actually in prose, but the original Latin's written in verse, and it's in dactylic hexameter. So kind of, you probably would have heard Shakespeare in iambic pentameter, but this is in dactylic hexameter. And
which book is this from?
Book 12, so that's the last book.
Right.
So the Aeneid's written in 12 parts, which kind of mirrors the Iliad and the Odyssey, which are written by Homer, which are both in 24 parts. But basically, the Aeneid was written by Virgil under the Emperor Augustus, he was a big PR guy, and because he was the first emperor of Rome, he really wanted to establish himself in the kind of hierarchy. He wanted to look real good. So in order to do that, he was like, I'm related to the gods. So he traced his lineage back all the way to Venus, and he did that through Aeneas, who established what would become Rome in the same place that Rome was kind of built. And to kind of perpetuate this life and kind of fantasy that he'd built around himself, he asked Virgil to write this poem, which is super long, and Virgil hated it. And on his deathbed, he asked for it to be destroyed, and it wasn't. And so I've translated it. Augustus was super happy with it. But the interesting thing is he didn't actually read all of it. And so Virgil did private readings for Augustus of certain selected chapters, but he did not actually read him the whole thing, and Augustus didn't really want to read it. So he just said, publish it, it's fine, he's dead, he will never know. And they did publish it, but interestingly enough, there are some, although it kind of predicts the whole future great race of Roman people and Italy will never be destroyed and it's all of this stuff, there are some things that kind of criticize Augustus and his whole regime that he didn't notice. So it's kind of interesting to read into, because you never quite know what Virgil's actual intention was when he wrote it.
Well then.
Okay. I'm going to try and translate it off the cuff, but I've got the English here in case I forget. how to speak Latin. So this is the Latin, basically. Nor does Aeneas pursue him any less, although his knees are slowed down by the arrow, and sometimes hinder him or prevent him from running. And seething with anger, foot to foot, he presses hard on his panicked enemy. Just as when, this is particularly good because it's a Homeric simile that Virgil's copied from Homer. Just as when a hunting dog comes across a deer confined by the river, or enclosed in fear of the purple arrow, so like a hunter, and presses hard upon him with speed and barking. However, the stag, terrified by the ambush and the high banks, flees and flees again 1,000 ways, but the Umbrian hound sticks closely to him and opens his mouth, and seizing it, or as if someone seizing it, snaps his jaws and is disappointed by the empty bite. Then there is an uproar and noise, and the banks and the lakes echo all around, and the sky thunders with all the uproar. At the same time, so it comes back to the actual action, at the same time, Turnus, fleeing, reproaches the Rutulians, his men, at the same time calling all of them each by name and demanding the return of his sword. So that's part of the Aeneid.
Okay.
That's basically what I've got to say.
Translation. So we've got a nice hunting metaphor, or simile there. Yes. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay. Sophie, do you want to contribute now?
Sure. So I chose a book again by Chris Riddell, and this is Poems to Live Your Life By. And the book, the actual poem I've chosen is something that was read at one of my family's weddings, and so it's quite special to me because it kind of relates to their life quite a bit. The poem I've chosen is The Road Not Taken by Robert Frost. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both, and be one traveller long I stood, and looked down one as far as I could, to where it bent in the undergrowth. Then took the other, as just as fair, and perhaps having the better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear, though, as for that passing there, had worn them really about the same, and both that morning equally lay, in leaves no step had trodden black. Oh, I kept the first for another day, yet knowing how way leads on to way. I doubted if I should ever come back. I shall be telling this with a sigh. Somewhere ages and ages hence, two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less travelled by, and that has made all the difference.
Thank you very much. It is a very special poem. Frost is very simple but really, really effective. Great, that's great. Do you know, have you got something you want to share with us?
Yeah.
Yeah?
So I actually bought two books. One's Michael Rosen, and the other one is 5 nonsense poems. The nonsense poems I was given when I was a child, so yeah. And it's also got some quite famous poets in here. So there's one by Carol Ann Duffy, one by Spike Milligan. Yeah, well, there's only 5 of them. So my favourite one, well, again, these are nonsense poems, but I just love the picture it sort of paints. So it's called The Squirtle. I thought I saw a squirtle, I think I thought I saw, I think I thunk I thought I saw a squirtle by my door. If it was not a squirtle, I thought I thunk I saw, then what in heaven's name was it that gave a squirtle roar? Perhaps I saw a puzzle squonk, but that would be absurd, because I think I thunk it was a squirtle that I heard. So if I saw a puzzle squonk, yet heard a squirtle roar, it means I think I thunk I thought I'd seen what I had saw. and that's by Spike Milligan.
Of course it is, yes.
Which I think is great.
Thank you.
And this one's Michael Rosen's. It's called No Breathing in Class, which is the name of another one of the poems in the book. But my favourite is one right at the end, which I think is just a bit bonkers, and I love it. Handwriting. There's a handwriting competition. Everyone's got to go in for the handwriting competition. But miss, I'm hopeless at handwriting. There's no point in my going in for the handwriting competition. Everyone's got to go in for the handwriting competition. Miss gave us a booklet with lines ruled across it. There was a story on one side, and on the other was the space where we had to write out the story in our own handwriting. But miss, I'm hopeless at handwriting. There's no point in my going in for the handwriting competition. Everyone's got to go into the handwriting competition. So I started writing, and when I made the loop at the top of the I's or at the bottom of the G's, my pen blobbed, and all the loops filled up. By the time I had finished, the whole page was covered in blobs. Miss came round to collect them up. When she saw mine, she said, "Well, Michael, there really wasn't much point in you going in for the handwriting competition, was there?" So, yeah.
Fabulous. Thank you very much, Juno. Somebody from Year 7? Crystal, got something you want to come and share with us? Yes. Who's it by?
So this is by...
At the bottom of the page.
It's by Claire Bevan,
Okay.
and I found it in the library.
Uh-huh.
And this is a letter that kind of links with the 3 Pig story, and I thought it was very funny. Dear Mr. Pig, we noticed you've built a house of straw. You didn't ask permission. You didn't say what for. You didn't ring our office. You didn't write, and so our big bad wolf will be right round to huff and puff and blow. Dear Pig, we're puzzled. Some creatures never learn. You've built a house of wooden planks, the sort that's bound to burn, the sort that's full of woodworm, the sort that cause trouble. Our big bad wolf will be right round to smash your place to rubble. Pig partner, now you've done it. You're either rude or lazy. You've gone built a house of bricks to drive our planners crazy. You didn't dig foundations. You knew we'd have to ban it. Our big bad wolf will be right round to blast you off the planet. Dear brothers Pig, our greetings. We huffed, we puffed, we blew. We even stormed your chimney, but nothing bothered you. Our big sad wolf will be right round to pay you our respects and offer you a splendid job with Beanstalk's architects.
Eleanor, have you got one you want to share?
Yes.
Yeah? Great.
Right, okay, so this is a bit of a gimmicky one.
Okay.
So, if anyone can guess where I got this poem from after I read it, I will be very impressed.
Competition then.
We travel across an empty field in my heart. There is nothing in the dark, I think, but he. I close my eyes and try to remember what I was. He says it was an important and interesting day because I put in his hands one night the box of light that had been a tree. So, any guesses? I'll give you a hint. If anyone here is in the art world, a similar concept has been talked about these past few months a lot.
Anybody? Year 10? No?
This poem was automatically generated by an AI called Collective Message.
Oh, wow.
Which was developed by the National Poetry Archive and the National Poetry Society.
Oh, right, how interesting. Well. Yes. How did you find out about that?
As I said for the art world, there's something called DALL-E 2, which has been coming around that creates auto-generated images. And I was like, Poetry Week, has anyone done that for poems? And it turns out they have.
They have.
Yeah.
Oh, excellent. Thank you, Anna. That's really interesting. Thank you. Sienna, you got something you want to share with us? Yeah?
So I wasn't sure what to talk about, but I didn't read this poem as like a traditional written down one. I actually saw it as a voiceover for a video, but it was quite interesting and made me think of like the villain in a fantasy world.
Okay.
It's called Ozymandias. I think that's how you spell it. It's by Percy Shelley. So.
Percy Shelley, yes, indeed.
I met a traveller from an antique land who said, "Two vast and trunkless legs of stone stand in the desert. Near them, on the sand, half sunk a shattered visage lies, whose frown and wrinkled lip and sneer of cold command tell that its sculptor well those passions read, which yet survive, stamped on these lifeless things, the hand that mocked them and the heart that fed, and on the pedestal these words appear. My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair. Nothing beside remains, round the decay of that colossal wreck, boundless and bare, the lone and level sands stretch far away."
Yes, yeah, really good. Thank you.
I just thought it was like civilizations that had been got lost to time.
Yes,
That's what I thought about.
Yes, we used to study it for GCSE, we don't now, but it's in the Power and Conflict version of GCSE, yes. Anybody else? Anybody else from Year 7? Yes? Excellent.
So I find it quite hard to think of a poem. So I went online and had a look at some, and this one was one
Great.
that was really.
And what's it called?
It's called Daffodils by William
Oh, a
Wordsworth.
great environment poem. Wonderful.
I wandered lonely as a cloud that floats on high over vales and hills, when all at once I saw a crowd, a host of golden daffodils, beside the lake beneath the trees, fluttering and dancing in the breeze, continuous as the stars that shine and twinkle on the Milky Way. They'd stretch in a never-ending line along the margin of a bay. 10,000 I saw at a glance, tossing their heads in sprightly dance. The waves beside them danced, but they outdid the sparkling waves in glee. A poet could not but be happy in such a jocund company. I gazed and gazed, but little thought what wealth the show to me had brought. For often when on my couch I lie, in vacant or in pensive mood, they flash upon that inward eye, which is the bliss of solitude, and then my heart with pleasure fills, and dances with the daffodils.
Lovely. Thank you very much. So 2 romantic poems, one after the other. Anybody else? Do you want somebody else to read it for you? Yeah?
So, this poem's called The Heart of a Friend. I shot an arrow into the air, it fell to earth, I knew not where. For so swiftly it flew, the sight could not follow in its flight. I breathed the song into the air, it fell to the earth, I knew not where. For who has sight so keen and strong that can follow the flight of a song? Long, long afterward in an oak I found the arrow still unbroke, and the song from beginning to end I found again in the heart of a friend.
Oh, lovely. That is so lovely. Thank you. Anybody else? Miss Rio? Sure. Yeah? Before we start our
Yes.
blackout.
Okay. Well, because the theme was the environment, I went with Emily Bronte poem because she has written a lot of poetry. This is a whole collection of all her poems that have been sort of gathered throughout her life. And she writes a lot about the environment of Yorkshire and the natural world and things like that. But they're all a little bit depressing, some of them. So I tried, the word dreary comes up a lot in all of them.
Lots of rain, I think, up in Howard, yes.
But I found one that's quite nice, and it's sort of all about when it starts to get darker, when it's a really hot day, and you sort of find some shade in that, the feeling of that. So it's a nice one.
'Tis moonlight, summer moonlight, all soft and still and fair. The solemn hour of midnight breathes sweetly everywhere. But most where trees are sending their breezy boughs on high, or stooping low are lending a shelter from the sky. And there in those wild bowers a lovely form is laid. Green grass and dew-steeped flowers wave gently round her head.
Yeah, lovely.
Very sweet.
Yes, the Romantics had it first, didn't they? They were our original nature people.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Did anyone else want to...
Anybody else? Marianne?
Marianne?
And who's it by?
Hang on, let me check. So recently I went to Daunt Books with my mum, and I got this book, and I picked it up and I was like, ooh, French poetry, maybe it'll be in French. No. It's not in French, it's translations of French poetry. This is by Madeleine de Lospine, translated by Norman Shapiro. It's called Let the Earth Cease Its Turning Suddenly. Let the earth cease its turning suddenly, and the fixed stars travel the ferment. Let sombre Saturn shine, benevolent. Jupiter rule the hosts beneath the sea. Let Mars turn peaceful, sun's lush clarity turn dim, then dark, grow motionless, outspent. Venus unloving, Mercury content, changeless, moon square no more a circle be. Let fire weigh heavy and earth weigh light, water feel dry and warm, let the flight of fish go coursing, grazing through the sky. Sooner than I might another know my love, but born was I to grant you all thereof. For you alone I live, and for you I die.
Yeah, it was unusual. Thank you very much. Anybody else? Mr. Shade? No, not today. Okay. All right. Well, that leads into your French poem leads into the Nobel Prize for Literature was announced today, this morning, and it's been given to an author called Annie Ernaux, who it transpires I've never heard of her, and I asked Madame Paul, she hadn't either, but she's actually a non-fiction writer. She writes autobiography, and she uses her parents' life and her own life to write about universal human experience. So she was awarded the Nobel Prize for Literature today. Other prizes, science, were earlier in the week, and tomorrow is the Peace Prize. So very much Nobel Prizes are in the news this week. And of course National Poetry Day today, although we haven't had a new poem from Simon Armitage, but he wrote one for the Queen, as did Kathleen Jamie. Right, so Miss Rio, shall we get started on our Blackout Poetry?
Yes.
Yes?
Sure.
Okay, so we'll all four gather over there. Yes.
And I can just
Explain, Miss Rio will explain for those of you who have not. Okay, well, as everybody's done a grand work in Blackout Poetry, I think it would be really nice if we perhaps delayed sharing till next week as we're running out of time. And what I would ask you to do is, girls, put your initials on your on your work, and then we can keep them here. So if you're not here next week, we can still hear it. And I can see great works have been made, lots of blackout or circling. So well done. Don't worry, there's nothing to worry about sharing it. Okay. I've been quite lucky. Mine's got three lines of poetry in the middle, so I've used those. Anyway, so thank you everybody for coming, and I hope you've enjoyed National Poetry Day. I've enjoyed sharing it with you. Thank you for all your contributions, new and old. It's been fabulous, and we look forward to sharing these again next week. Thanks ever so much. Okay.